Long Beach is the city that we're coming from, yeah.
Their lyrics tell a story about 150 high school kids from Long Beach, California, who call themselves freedom riders, and the teacher who changed them from teenagers without hope into students with dreams. Just 4 years ago, Darius was fresh out of jail and living on the streets. Maria was in a tough gang, and her close friend was on trial for murder. Jaime started bringing a gun to school after his friend was killed in a drive-by. They came from a world ruled by violence, not education. Their journey began, oddly enough, with an ugly prank in the classroom. Sherrod Moore was the class bully. Erin Gurel was just 23 years old, a brand new teacher with no idea how to deal with the student from hell.
Here he saw this preppy student teacher, and every day he would just do ruthless things to get the class laughing or just really to disrupt the class.
I was like, I'm gonna make this lady cry in front of the whole classroom. That was my goal.
But the tables turned quickly when it was Sherrod who became the target of a racial slur. One day in Erin Grul's class, somebody started passing a note around, and this was it. It was a picture. Do you remember?
Oh, is that the picture? Oh, yeah, that was the picture.
It had actually circulated the classroom, this picture of this young man with really crude, exaggerated lips.
I snatched it and I looked at it and I almost cried.
And it reminded me of a drawing that I had seen where the Nazi propaganda artist had drawn Jews looking like rats with a really exaggerated nose looking like a rat. So what I did is I started yelling and screaming, and I said, this note reminds me of the Holocaust. And I'll never forget it. A kid very timidly raised his hand and said, Ms. Grewell, what's the Holocaust?
Grewell was stunned at the possibility that her students had never heard of one of the most horrifying events in human history. She searched her mind for some way to reach these kids.
And I said, okay, how many of you have been shot at? Every single kid raised their hand. And not only did they raise their hand, they started pulling up their shirts and saying, well, this is where I almost got hit, or this is where I got knifed. And it became this really excited moment where the kids were sharing their war stories.
Stories about seeing friends die, about going hungry, about being beaten down. On the tough streets on the east side of Long Beach, they were struggling with their own nightmares. The young teacher knew she had hit a raw nerve. This was the key she would use to unlock their minds. She took them to see the film Schindler's List and to the Simon Wiesenthal Museum of Tolerance, where they saw human hatred in graphic detail. Can you relate your life to the Holocaust?
I could see the pain of thousands and thousands of people dying because of the way they look or because of their religion. And I could compare it to the gang violence that's going on in our city.
The students began to see how the small seed of hatred in a racist note could grow and multiply with tragic results.
You can take history and relate it to something that's going on in the present. And that's the beauty of it.
We went to the museum as this very haphazard, eclectic group, and when we left, we were a family.
Camaraderie, the unity in this room, we have camaraderie.
She decided it was time for this family to make a pledge. She called it the Toast for Change.
And she just like, oh, you know, I need all you guys to get up and get in a circle, and you guys have to hold hands, and we have to toast for change. That from this day on, we don't care what you did before, the grades you have, it doesn't matter, we don't care. This day, you're like born again.
And something happened as we're standing around, everyone's holding their hands, and they're 15 years old. Kids started crying.
I guess I wanted to change, I just didn't know how.
Up until that moment, the future for Maria was just a painful repetition of the past. When you were 11 or 12 years old, did you think you had a future?
No. I just thought I was gonna get pregnant and have kids.